How are we doing? I hope well. I'm Bruce Williams. Welcome. Welcome to my world. We talk about you, your life, your hopes, your ambitions, and from time to time, we spin a dream or two. Wow. I've used that opening to begin each hour for almost 29 years on the network program. Over 22,000 times. Can you believe that? 22,000 times plus. I don't know the exact number, and I don't think it's really relevant. But we just did a little quick math, and it's well over 22,000 times. And this evening will mark the last time. I haven't got a whole lot planned because I'm kind of hopeful I'll be speaking to many of you in the next 3 hours. I want to share with you the couple of dog poems because, you know, they're close to me, and a couple of letters. I cannot tell you how pleased I am, proud, use whatever term you choose, for so many nice things that you guys have said. And I will cherish those. In the final hour, that's the 9 o'clock to 10 Eastern time, I will play for you the first telephone call asking for advice. And during that hour, I suspect I will take the last telephone call with many, many thousands in between. It's been an interesting day for me. It's been a long day for me. It is, this has not been easy, and so many of you have indicated it won't be real easy for you. And I am certainly grateful for that support, because, you know, some things I don't do very well. But I will do my best to try to entertain for this last 3 hours. Talk with you. The number, by the way, 877-287-4964. We have some open lines, 877-287-4964. Alternatively, the email at askbruce@brucewilliams.com. A lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff. There have been the good, the bad, and the ugly. And of course, look, I'm just as human as the next guy. When I punched up the ISDN line that we are speaking over right now, I'm thinking when the green lights lit up and so forth, when I push the button to the right, something like 3 hours from now, the green lights are going to go off, however, indefinitely. But it's been fun, people. I was also thinking today that if Rush retains his health and his interest in this business, and the business will continue, that sometime in 2017, he will then eclipse my broadcast career in terms of longevity. There's nobody even close following Rush. He started in August of 1988, and his career sort of began in my apartment in New York City when Bruce Marr, one of the major makers and shakers in radio, consultant, he found Rush. You know, Rush never had to go out or didn't have to or whatever. He was brought to New York City by Eddie McLaughlin, the former president of ABC, and Bruce Marr. And Bruce brought him to my crash pad on East 51st Street in New York. Said, can you talk some sense into this guy? Well, that was an impossible task, which was one of the more intelligent things that Rush did. Didn't pay the slightest bit of attention to what I had to say. Although I was hard on him in some ways. He was unhappy with what he's getting paid and a lot of things. Understandable. But I use some language which is certainly not appropriate, and some suggestions also not appropriate on the air. But the substance of them was, you were so damn lucky to have somebody bring you from the provinces in California to New York City to give you a shot, and I suggested what he might owe those guys. And I said 3 years, 5 years from now, he may be the hottest thing in radio, which he was. About 4 years later, he became red hot. But I can see myself sitting in that apartment with Bruce and a lady I was seeing at the time, and try to talk him into some sensible things, like get an apartment in New York, in New Jersey. It's a lot cheaper. Well, he wasn't going for that, and so forth. All of which he was much smarter than I and didn't go for any of that. But in any case, if he hangs in there till somewhere in 2017, which I'm sure he'll do, he will then own the record. But for the next 7 years, I will still have had the longest running national talk presentation that the country has ever seen. It's nice to have a record. All records were meant to be broken. Asheboro, North Carolina. Hello there.
Hi, boss. How are you?
I am just fine, thank you. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
I don't know whether you remember me, but I was your engineer for a few years back in Crystal City.
And what is your name?
Dean Everett.
Of course. Of course. You were in, and you did Larry King, too, did you not?
I did Larry, did Bruce, did David Essel, and of course I did the boss.
Son of a gun. Of course I recall. I've heard from so many people that we have touched together over the years, connected over the years, and it's been nice to know that you guys still remember the name, for goodness sake. There's really no reason for you to remember, but I'm appreciative.
I got an email from Susan yesterday. She said, "Do you realize Bruce is doing his final show tomorrow night?" And I thought, I better give you a call.
Well, thank you. I guess Susan's sitting right here. Did you get his name from Kevin? Beth? Who? Oh, he sent an email. Okay. Yeah, my wife, for the first time, and the last night I'm doing the show, she's sitting here with a headset on so she can hear both sides of the conversation. Took her a while to catch on, you know. Well, I thank you very, very much. What are you up to now?
I am what a foundation president in Washington, D.C. called me a general factotum. When I left the business in 2001, when we got riffed out of Crystal City, I took a 10-week vacation, and an acquaintance called and said, "I need someone to help me square away my office." And I have been working nonstop since then. What I do is whatever needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And guess who taught me?
I'm afraid to ask.
You.
How so?
You know, the comment your dad made to you was, the first thing, get a job.
That's true. He always said, get on a payroll.
Get on a payroll, right. And I've nenever forgotten those words. Also, I've never forgotten sump pumps, and I've still yet to figure that out. But,
dear.
She said, I need someone to organize my office and get things squared away and keep things operational. She was with a nonprofit. She was with the D.C. Public Library Foundation. I spent 3 years with them and then developed a few more clients and moved on and on and on. And in fact, right now I'm working on my attorney's mother's home. She passed away last year, and she was of my mother's generation, the Depression generation. They never threw anything away.
That should be a challenge.
It is. It's a joyous challenge, and you come to mind about every third or fourth day on some of the instructions that you gave to callers, and I'm finally able to apply what you taught me.
Well, son of a gun.
But
well, I appreciate it, my
missed.
friend, and I am glad things are going well for you, and I truly appreciate you emailing us and taking the time to call. I do wish you well. Boy, there was a lot of people along the way. Our telephone number, if you'd like to join us, 877-287-4964. I'm going to share a couple of letters, as a matter of fact. It said, Dear Bruce, it is with a heavy heart I composed this letter. This is your last broadcast, and I feel if I'm losing a close friend. My heart is heavy because I face the same obligation I faced almost a year ago to the day. You may recall, I asked you to recite the dog prayer, which you graciously did when my family helped Molly, our Brittany, to her final reward. Our other Brittany lady is now suffering from spleen cancer, and her quality of life is declining. Last year, my younger son is coming home from college and will spend our final weekend with Lady. She's lost her appetite and most of her strength, so a trip to McDonald's for a burger and a walk in the park are not an option this time. However, we will spend time petting her and lavishing her with love. And as we did a year ago with Molly, we will take the lady on her final visit to the vet, where we will help her pass over the Rainbow Bridge. Again, we remind ourselves we are not doing what is best for us, but what is best for Lady. Thankfully, we can help a beloved pet end needless suffering, and I hope someday in the future that we are offered the same option for ourselves. I know you mentioned you'll be reading the dog prayer tonight in your final program, and I thank you for doing that. I originally sent you this poem almost 11 years ago when you lost Mickey, and hope it provided you the same solace it will provide my family once again. Thank you for the 20 years, me and my wife, Dave and Mary Volz. This is to be continued. I'm Bruce Williams. The letter I just read you is dated March the 5th, 2010 at 12:04 a.m. A letter that has been on my bulletin board since Friday, March the 6th, precisely 1 year ago, from the same writer, Dave in Pierce, South Dakota. Says, I don't know if you'll get time for this tonight. I don't know if you'll get this in time for tonight's show, but if you do, could you read the dog's prayer? You read this after you helping Mickey pass. I guess it's nearly 10 years now. Actually, it was probably near 11 and a half. We're facing the same hard decision for our Brittany Molly. We went to the vet today, and Molly is getting old and facing kidney failure and a lump in her throat that is cutting off her air supply. Her heart and lungs are strong. Her system will slowly poison itself, and her breathing will become more difficult. The only humane thing to do is help her to the great beyond. My son is coming home from college tonight, and we, as a family, are spending the weekend with Molly. We'll take her for a ride to get a hamburger at McDonald's and let her spend some time at the park. We will lavish her in love and come Monday take her to her final trip to the vets. While the Rainbow Bridge is a wonderful reminder of our pets that have passed, the dog prayer is an eloquent reminder to pet owners concerning their responsibility to their animals. We're at that point, and this poem will reinforce what we are doing, what is best for Molly, rather than ourselves. And as I was talking to you just now, I have two more spectators in the studio, Pistol and Biscuit. The dog's prayer, and it's coincidental, a terrible coincidence, but the coincidental that the two letters sent by Dave were precisely 1 year apart, with the same agonizing decision to be made for a second time. A dog's prayer as follows. Treat me kindly, my beloved master, for no heart in all the world is more grateful than the loving heart of me. Do not break my spirit with a stick, for though I should lick your hand between the blows, your patience and understanding will more quickly teach the things that you would have me learn. Speak to me often, for your voice is the world's sweetest music, as you must know by the fierce wagging of my tail when your footsteps fall on my waiting ears. Please take me inside when it's cold and wet, for I am a domesticated animal, no longer used to bitter elements, and I ask no greater glory than the privilege of sitting at your feet beside the hearth. Keep my pan filled with fresh water, for I cannot tell you when I suffer thirst. Feed me clean food, that I may stay well to romp and play, and do your bidding to walk by your side, and stand ready, willing, and able to protect you with my life, should your life be in danger. And should my sight fade as I grow graceful in age, I will continue to love you and sit faithfully at your side. Take me for walks as you've done in the past. Only this time you are my eyes, and your lead will I trust. And if the great master sees fit to deprive me of my health, do not turn away from me. Rather, see that my trusting life is taken gently, and I shall leave you knowing, with the last breath I drew, my fate was always safest in your hands. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, corny. Well, that can be your judgment. But these things are sure not corny to me. A little later on, you'll have to suffer through or enjoy, your choice, the Rainbow Bridge. My dogs, my pets are important to me, as I'm sure many of yours are important to you. Let's start real quick here with Superior, Wisconsin. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. It's an honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you.
I've been meaning to call you for years. I figured if I was going to, I'd better hurry up. So.
Tonight's the night.
Yeah, I just had a question. I had an idea for a product kind of rolling around in my head, and I was kind of just curious your thoughts, what the first steps would be if I wanted to, get it going and to have it produced.
Well, first of all, kind of don't get it. You got to make a decision. Is this something I really want to do?
Okay. And
let's assume you've come that far. What are we talking about, just in general?
It's be kind of like just like a novelty type item. It really has no function. It's kind of like a funny type item. Actually, be kind of like something like a pet owner would be interested in.
Okay, but it in some way is mechanical. Even a bone is mechanical. It's a lever.
Yeah, I guess basically, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you want to hold on for just a moment after we take care of a piece of business, let's explore that. I'm Bruce Williams. I'm chatting with a gentleman in Superior, Wisconsin. And what he's talking about doing, and I can understand this, got an idea for a product, and what do I do to promote it? Well, the first thing you got to decide is, are you prepared to spend some money?
Okay.
Now, that's a question for you. Are you able and are you willing to spend some money?
Sure.
Because that's an absolute requisite.
Okay.
Let's start with that. First thing I would do, and I have done, and sometimes you're not going to like the answers that you get, you're going to have to find out if somebody else has already got something like this. And the fact that you have never seen it is of no moment. That means somebody, and that somebody is ordinarily a patent attorney, has to give you an opinion as to whether A, somebody else got there first, which is often the case, and B, if not, is it defensible, patentable?
Okay.
That $1,500 probably gets you there. Certainly no more than a couple thousand.
Yeah, I did a search on the internet, and I can't find anything like that.
Yeah, but let me ask you something. How old are you?
35.
Did you ever have an operation?
Thankfully, no.
Nobody pulled a tooth, nothing?
No, not yet.
Well, then you are damn fortunate. But if you had a toothache, would you pull it out yourself?
No.
Well, you don't go to the internet and do a search either. You can do it for laughs, but you ought to hire a pro.
Okay.
All right, because what are you going to do when you spend a lot of money developing something, you get a letter from somebody who says, drop dead, that's my product.
Point taken.
So after you've done the search and you decide it's worth pursuing, now we got to talk about getting a patent, and that isn't real expensive, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 maybe.
Okay.
And let's assume that takes somewhere from a year or 2 years.
I'm kind of wondering if it would even be something that would be patentable.
Well, I don't know that. That's one of the questions that your attorney is going to ask.
Sure.
And it may be copyrightable. The only thing that can be protected is its name.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, see, I don't know any of the answers to these questions. More importantly, you don't know either.
How would you go about getting a prototype or whatever?
Oh wow, you're putting the cart way the hell in front of the horse here. You can do that as well.
Sure. And
it depends upon what we're talking about here. But let's just go back a little bit, and if the attorney says maybe there's something here we can protect, then you gotta start pursuing it. All right.
Okay.
At the same time, you got to decide if you want to have something made. Now, of course, everybody is paranoid about, they'll steal it. And they might, but not usually. If this is something I don't know what it's going to, so I'm just going to talk about a dog bone, okay?
Okay.
Well, and I don't even want those dog bones, they're made out of some kind of plastic that my dogs seem to be able to devour, but nonetheless, they're produced in some kind of a plastic factory.
Sure.
Of which I know nothing, but I could sure find out, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to talk to them about, and it may take a mold, so many variables here. The most expensive that you'll ever make is the first one.
Right.
But you're not going to go out and produce a whole bunch of other ones until such time as you know that you're not going to get your brains handed to you, and that you've done enough tests to know it's not going to hurt anybody, so you can get product liability insurance, which is absolute must.
Okay.
Now we've done all the easy stuff. Now we got to get to how do you merchandise it.
Right. And
that is where the skills lie. Very rarely back to my dog bone, will a pet company even speak to you until such time as you can produce a patent.
Sure.
Or whatever, and if you give them a letter saying it can't be protected, well, lots of luck, But most companies don't want to talk to you because if they produce something similar, you're going to swear that they stole it from you.
Right.
So that's why they want generally a patented product if possible.
Okay.
And then you go to the next step. Are you willing to spend some real money on producing a fair number of these things? And you got to screw around. What's in your head probably requires a lot of revisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to try to get them in the stores, and that's the most difficult thing of all. Now, a specialized product would have a limited number of places that can handle it. A pet-related item, we keep the local pet store in business. My wife has told me when she goes past there, the car somehow goes on automatic drive, swings into the driveway, and her wallet floats out with 2 or 3 credit cards. And Pistol and Biscuit here are very selective. They have a Monday toy, a Tuesday toy, and Biscuit has at least 6 or 7 beds at, $30, $40 a pop. But that's where you got to get them, into those kinds of stores.
Sure.
And if you get lucky and maybe you're the 1 in 100, you make a lot of money. Or maybe it's 1 in 1,000. I don't know what the number is. But you see, ideas are a nickel each. Very rarely will people follow through. As soon as they hear they got to get the checkbook out, their ardor suddenly cools. And then 10 years later, I thought of that when they see the thing, the hula hoop or the Frisbee on the shelf, which they thought of years before. And many of us have had that experience. You may have had it as well.
Yeah.
That you thought about something a long time ahead. But it requires effort and it requires money.
Okay.
But if you believe in it,
take a shot.
That's up to you. And of course, if you have a spouse and you blow the family bankroll, you're liable to have a problem there too, which is yet another circumstance. I thank you so very much, my friend. Yeah, ideas, they are literally a nickel each. Oh, I didn't give a telephone number. It's 877-287-4964. 877-287-4964. I will be repeating this. A lot of things. First of all, had a ton of phone calls even tonight. Will the website stay up? And the answer is yes. Will the email address, will it be on the website? Will we have telephones? Yes. Certainly for 6 months, maybe to a year. And to what end? Well, people have asked if we could kind of stay in touch, and I'll try and do that. I have no notion where all of this is going to lead, if anywhere, where my life is going to lead. And as I've said many times now, that I intend to make no decisions of any import until after we get back from our cruise, which is 3 weeks from now, at least 3 weeks. And maybe not any decisions made then, which I want to sit down and think things over and talk to Susie and some of my children and so on and so forth. And we will see. Mercifully, I'm not going to be on food stamps. And I'm happy about that. So I don't have a gun to my head to make a decision or go look for a job, as have many of you. I am blessed in that regard. Well, on the other hand, there is absolutely no way in the world that I would, in the traditional sense, retire. I mean, I'll go bag groceries at Publix first. Wouldn't that be funny as hell? With my arms trying to put groceries in a bag. That'd be hysterical. And then the first time they looked at me, it would give you a job, but you never know. Maybe I could. Do they take volunteers, like candy stripers at Publix? They do? Well, maybe I can wander up and down a while and people will think I'm working there while I'm putting stuff in bags. My point is I got to have something to do, as do many of you. And I really don't know what that something will be. It most surely will not be golf or tennis and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. And God forbid it should be a full-time bike riding job. I mean, I started today and I said to myself, I'm going to have a normal day today. Well, you know damn well that was impossible. Tom Jackson of the Tampa Tribune wrote a very flattering article about me today, and I couldn't be more pleased that he is a gentleman, and he was very, 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 very kind. Point is, the paper's sitting out there in the driveway. Now, I'm too cool. See, I'm not going to race out the drive. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the paper was out in the driveway. But let me tell you, I'm not going to go put on whatever you have to put on to roam around in a driveway at that hour in the morning. I mean, I'm too cool for that. I'll wait till 8 o'clock or 8:30. And I did. I really did. And then my wife comes in with the article. I snatched it out of her hands. Well, that was the beginning of the day, and I told myself I got to do my bike ride. Got to get that in. And it was cold. Here in Florida, for goodness sakes, we're having extra stuff put in our radiators. I mean, it's so damn cold. Not quite. But it's only 10 degrees warmer here than it is up in New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Something wrong there. But I went out for my bike ride with my fur gloves on and whatever, once again trying to have a normal day. Well, as you can imagine, the entire day was anything but normal. I'm Bruce Williams. I have a letter from Mike Wingren in Oshkosh. Mike, it says, how might I get a copy of the dog prayer? I find myself in the same situation as many other dog lovers. My companion and faithful friend is now not having the quality of life she deserves, and I will be going for her last visit to the vet next week. It would mean so much to have a copy of this prayer. I'm heartbroken. Thanks for the many years of just being there. You've enriched my life. Bill Wingreen in Oshkosh. Hopefully, Bill, we can find you in the telephone directory, or if you're listening, send me an email with an address, and, well, Susan will work it out. Some way or other over the weekend, Bill, we will send it to you. But a telephone number where we can talk to you would be very much appreciated. And since you just sent this at 7:40, I have a reasonable expectation that you're listening right now. And I do sympathize. Other things being equal, you are doing precisely what has to be done. When I tried to keep my Boston Terrier, another coincidence, his name was Sookie, and I tried to keep him alive beyond the time where his quality of life dictated that should be. I gave him whiskey, and I gave him sugar water and honey and whatever. And it's sort of strange that came to mind tonight on my last network program, because I took to the vet for his last trip. Halloween, I guess that Halloween's the 30th, is it not? Of October. 31st? Well, that would work. 31st of October, 1981, Saturday before I did my first network broadcast on the 2nd of November of 81. Amazing how things come together. Pensacola, hello there.
Hello, Bruce. Good evening to you.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to thank you for about 23 years of companionship on the radio. You and I have talked dozens of times over that 23 years, sometimes me asking advice and sometimes me arguing a contrary point of view, but I wanted to thank you for that. I am the owner and general manager of WEBY Radio, a Bruce Williams affiliate here in Pensacola, and I wanted to congratulate you on all the years that you've been on the air, and thank you for everything that you've done for the radio industry and for me personally.
You are very, very generous. You guys are the backbone of the business. It isn't the huge networks. It's the independent owners. The biggest bad thing that has happened to this industry, and I think it was under Mr. Reagan, I could be mistaken, when they allowed companies to snap up hundreds of radio stations.
Yeah, that was the Telecom Act of '96. That was a Republican Congress and a Bill Clinton signature.
Bill Clinton. I thought it was earlier than that, '96. In other words, companies like Clear Channel came along and got built that quickly.
Well, Clear Channel existed before that, but they grew into the monstrous evil empire after the Telecom Act.
96.
Yep.
So, for my listeners, before that time, you were limited by law as to how many stations you could own. I think it was 8 a.m. and 8 FM or something like that.
Yeah, I don't have the number.
Then they pulled the plug out of the dam, and suddenly companies owned hundreds and hundreds. They had the money and the clout, and suddenly they owned hundreds and hundreds of radio stations, and the face of radio changed, and in my opinion, not for the better.
Well, I completely agree with that. May I indulge you with a quick story?
Please.
I don't remember the specific date, but I know it was December 1987. I was working at a country radio station in Newport News, Virginia, and I was driving home one night, and there was nothing worth listening to on the FM dial. And I punched all the way up and down. There was nothing. So I punched over to this button on the radio labeled AM, which I guess stands for amplitude modulation, right?
Absolutely.
And you were on. And you kept me company all the way home, and I thought, this is a really interesting program. And I have been listening to you and to AM Talk Radio ever since.
Son of a gun.
And now I own one.
You own one or it owns you?
Well, these days, I guess it owns me.
I do
Not
wish
easy
you...
being in the advertising business these days.
It's a tough racket. Well, thank you so very, very much for sharing, and perhaps our paths will cross again. Let us hope so. Our telephone number, 877-287-4964. Or, if you wish, ask Bruce at brucewilliams.com. I'm Bruce Williams. Lebanon, Pennsylvania. It's your turn in my world. Hello there.
Thank you, Bruce. I want to thank you for all the many years of listening entertainment that you've given. I always had good intentions to call you, and I thought I'd better get to it tonight.
Well, it'd be the last shot for a while, I think.
I met you in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. You spoke at the Harrisburg Forum, a very beautiful facility.
Yes, I recall. I was hoping one day to get invited up to Hershey because they had a theater there that was outstanding.
Yes. And after your speech at the forum, you stayed around and answered questions and gave autographs as long as it took for anyone who wanted to come up to see you.
That was what I always tried to do. I figured if... You know who showed me that? Of all, I mean, he didn't show it to me deliberately. Serious?
Who?
It was Liberace.
Oh, okay.
Liberace was hot stuff, whether you liked him or not. He was big time. And I took one of my kids to see him because he was then an aspiring piano player. He is now a very accomplished pianist. But someone had made a phone call so I could take Michael backstage to meet Liberace after his performance. I waited certainly an hour and a half while he sat on the stage, and for every little old lady that came up, he talked to them and then wrote them out an autograph. And that was getaway night, too. They were breaking down to go somewhere else. That made an impression, and that was long before I was out doing this sort of stuff. I guess I was on some television with ABC or something, so I knew somebody. But the point is that here was a guy, a multi-bazillionaire, the guy that had the biggest audience ever in Radio City history, and he took the time to sign every autograph. And I told myself at the time, if by any remote possibility I'm in that position, I will continue, I will do what he does. And I did.
Very good. I have a question. When you used to give the financial advice, you used to mention math formulas. I kind of remember rule of 9.
Yeah, the rule of 9s, the rule of 78s. These are all ways to compute interest, and unfortunately we are just about running out of time for this segment. But I'm confident you go on the internet. The rule of 78s is simply a way to figure out how long your money will take at a given interest rate to double. There are a dozen formulas out there to accomplish various tasks. And I think if you just punch into Google the rule of 9s, which is take a little more time than we have now, and there's a whole bunch of those which would be well to have in your arsenal, so you can make a decent decision. I thank you so very, very much. I'm Bruce Williams. Radio. Well, how are we doing? I hope well. I'm Bruce Williams. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world, where we talk to you, with you, and about you. Your life, your hopes, your ambitions, and even your dreams. Our telephone number, should you wish to join us, 877-287-4964. I mentioned at the beginning of the first hour, as I will the next hour, that, the next hour will be the last of that introduction, which I have given in excess of 22,000 times. That's a long time, no matter how you slice it. That is a long time. If there's something coming down in your life, I'd like very much to hear from you. We had a gentleman in Oshkosh who asked about the dog's prayer, and without a signature, so the email site says Jassapai. I don't want to invade on his privacy, but he says, I hope this helps. And there are a whole bunch of dogs' prayers on the internet. The address, www.canine, C-A-N-I-N-E, hyphen, E-P-I-L-E-P-S-Y, E-P-I-L-E-P-S-Y .com / pet loss, one word, PETLOSS .html. And the dog's prayer is there along with a good many others, including the Rainbow Bridge. That is one hell of an address. I'll repeat it again, and I think we'll put that on the website too. And the website will stay up there for at least 6 months, maybe a year. Telephone numbers, and there'll be stuff on there that occur to me, and we'll put it up on the website, as well as the products that we own, the pork roll and the flowers and all that sort of stuff will all be on there with whatever they call them, attachments or whatever. The Dog's Prayer site again, www.canine, C-A-N-I-N-E, hyphen, E-P-I-L-E-P-S-Y, E-P-I-L-E-P-S-Y .com / pet loss .html. Man, that is some kind of an address. Our telephone number, that's easy. 877-287-4964. Alternatively, ask Bruce at BruceWilliams.com. Arlington, Texas. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
I am just fine, thank you.
I was sitting there scratching my Welsh Corgi's ears as you read the prayer. And
you have a Corgi?
I do. He's a pistol too. A lot of fun, a lot of personality in those dogs.
I'll bet you. Well, one of my the first dog when I was first married 1,000,000 years ago, was a mutt, and I spent $15, which was outrageous for this mutt. But he had a tremendous amount of Corgi in him.
Yeah, he's my buddy. He keeps me company here in the office, much like your dogs.
Yeah,
but
my two guys are sitting right here on the couch.
Good deal. Well, 20 years ago, a friend of mine who's listening over in Dallas tonight as well, he introduced me to your show and talk radio in general, and I've been hooked ever since. And I just got an internet radio 2 months ago, and I was able to pick up your show there, and I've been really following, listening to it every night again. And I just wanted to say thank you, Bruce, for all your just common sense advice and your pleasing voice to listen to over the years.
You're very. What is an internet radio? I've not heard of that.
Well, it's I guess it's kind of a computer, if you will, but you can scan in all these different radio stations. Anybody that broadcasts over the internet, like you do on the GAB network or satellite system or whatever it is. Anybody who has a site up, this pulls it in, and it sorts them out by genre and things like that. And I was just cruising through one night on the dial. This one's made by Sanyo. I got it at Fry's Electronics, but just a great way to find wonderful, radio programs. But
what has been an eye opener to me.
Well, good deal.
Oh, there's another. I was about to point out that we've received. I'm supporting the paper industry. Some people have been so generous with the emails, but a huge, significant percentage are people listening as you are on the internet.
It's the way to do it, I think. It's here in Dallas. They've got stations are clogged up with a lot of junk at night and a lot of repetitive stuff, and so if you want to find good programming like yours, you just got to seek it out. So I've been able to do that. But
a lot of people have suggested that we continue on the internet. I don't know that it's ever going to happen, but
I hope so.
Well, I appreciate. Are there commercials on there or what?
No, it's odd because you go silent from the top of the hour until about 6 after, and then I could actually hear you queue up or do something. I hear your voice sometimes, just like a go or something like that, and then the program, the music starts at 6 after, and then your commercials for New Jersey pork roll and the potting shed and things like that are on there, but the no national syndicated ads at the top of the hour, no news, no news or anything.
How about the other stations you listen to? Do they have the ones that are not broadcast stations, strictly internet? How do they make any money to keep on there doing this?
Good question. I think that there are some that do have their ads, or that there's paid advertising. Some of the ones I've come across, it just depends. Some of the like comedy stations and things like that, kind of like almost like a Sirius or XM type setup. But you hear some commercials, but certainly not as many as you would say on a WBAP or somebody like that.
A traditional station. Interesting. I'm going to look into that during this hiatus that I'm going to carve out for myself. I thank you so very, very much for your call, my friend. Our telephone number, 877-287-4964. I'm not sure this was meant to be shared, but I'm going to share it with you. It's a note from my eldest son, Matthew. And he said, "Pop, you have always been my hero." And I am touched. But he's clipped this from someplace. I'm pretty certain I know the origin. Goodness gracious, let me clear my throat. He says, "This was the noblest Roman of them all. All the conspirators, save only he, did that they did in envy of great Caesar. He, only in a general honest thought, and common good to all, made one of them. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, 'This was a man.'" Matthew, if you're listening, love you. Nice to know that your kids still think that you're human. Goodness gracious. That is a whole other program. A whole other program. Hartford, Wisconsin. Hello there.
Good evening, Bruce. How are you today?
Just fine, thank you so much.
Bruce, I just had to call and tell you a little story. There's been many things that you've impacted on our lives, but you know how you're always telling everyone to wear our seatbelts?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a teenage son, and he proudly listens with me when I have my radio on, and he came home to happily tell me that he has convinced more than one of his friends at school to wear their seatbelts who weren't before. So I thought you'd like to know that the teenagers some of them are still doing it.
I'm glad to hear that, because, you see, this has been a fun enterprise for me. It's been a serious one. It's been what I've been well paid to do, and so on and so forth. But on the more serious side, we do have an influence on people who we will never know. And, who knows, one of those kids one day may be riding as an adult or with their own child, but they've gotten in a habit of doing what I believe is the only correct thing to do, and maybe they'll go on living because of it.
And that is always my hope, too. That's everyone's biggest fear of their child to begin with, them getting hurt. So it's definitely been an impact in our home, Bruce, and I'm going to miss you terribly. Thank you so much for everything.
You are very generous. Thank you so much. Telephone number, if you'd like to get on the party line, 877-287-4964. In the alternative, the email, askbruce@brucewilliams.com. Last couple of days, I have I just started jotting stuff down, and suddenly I had a list of about 100 things which are meaningful to me. And just looking at the and things that I did, things that worked out for me. Some of them you can be proud of, some of them you can't. But I found that all these little, if you want to call them gimmicks of life, I'm not suggesting that you do any of these things other than getting your thinking as far out of whatever that box is as we possibly can. Does that make any sense? I most surely hope it does. For example, years ago when I first started along with my wife, the nursery school, and we didn't call it daycare, which still irritates me. Daycare is not what it was. It was a school environment where the kids actually were taught stuff, not just a custodial place to stick them so you can go to work. Nothing wrong with going to work, don't misunderstand me, but the expression daycare, all these years later, and I sold that place 35 years ago. That would it be? Yeah, 35 years ago. 14 years was enough in that business. But when I started, like many of you, I was flat broke, had no money, and a couple of minutes into the expedition, I was running out of dough. And I didn't have a family I could turn to because they didn't have any money either. More in a moment. I'm Bruce Williams. As I was saying, like a lot of I love that word, entrepreneur. I don't know if I was an entrepreneur or whatever, but I had no money, started a business, and 2 or 3 months into the enterprise, I was flat broke. I don't have a dime, and I need some money. In fact, it was so close into the business, the landlady who I was renting from for the first few months hadn't even taken her furniture out of my house. So that nails it down pretty close. In any event, I saw an ad in the New Brunswick Home News advertising the opening of a beneficial finance in a place called Kendall Park, New Jersey. Interestingly, 40 years later, 35 years later, I owned a barber shop in the same space where this beneficial finance was. But in any case, I went up there, and I think the bank opened next door at 9 o'clock. So I got there about 5 or 9, something like that, set my watch back. So my watch was the wrong time, and I walked up and down the sidewalk the day beneficial finance was opening. Well, this guy comes out because I know he's going to be hungry. This is his first day, probably his first time being a manager. Finally, he says, "Hey there, how are you?" I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And I kept right on going, turned around and walked. And he says, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm waiting for the bank to open." He said, "It's open." "No, it's only 2 minutes to 9. No, your watch is wrong." Now, we talked for it. He says, "Well, you need any money?" I said, "Well, I never thought about it." "Well, what are you talking about?" He says, "Come in." Now, we know the fish is hooked. The question is, who's the fish? We get inside there, and he starts the maximum you could borrow from a small loan company in New Jersey at that time legally was $500. Now, we're talking, he said, "Well, I'm getting interested. You got to be kidding me." He said, "Well, do you have any stock?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I got some stock. I had 2 shares of stock that was worth about $10 that I won in a contest working for Wesson Oil a few years before. That was, but he said, and he went on and about collateral. I knew more about collateral than he did. Finally, he said, "Well, how about furniture?" Well, I said, "Everybody's got furniture." He said, "Can I go look at it?" Well, why not? Well, the only furniture I have was it's a good piano now because I had it all reconstructed. It was a grand piano that my father gave to me the day I was born. and it was already beat from being in a nursery school, and a refrigerator that was built at least 2 years before I was born. That was it. The kids were sleeping on the nap cots, had no furniture, whatever. But Mrs. Coronas, who owned the building, had oriental rugs and a dining room set that was worth more than I could even imagine, wall hangings and whatever, all of which were still in the building because she hadn't moved them out yet that I was ready. And I called my wife and I said, show Mr. So-and-so through the house. I didn't say I owned anything, but when he got in there and saw the oriental rugs and he didn't even look at half the stuff, and I gave him a mortgage on all the furniture that I owned at Box 360, RD3, Box 365. It was $29.70 a month, if I remember correctly. But that $500 is what kept me afloat for another month or a month and a half till I got a couple more kids who actually paid me up front and whatever. Now, you could say that was dishonest. Well, I guess it was marginal, because I never told him that I owned the furniture, but as he strolled through the house, if he wanted to come up, and think that I owned all that stuff, that was his business. But I never told him that, and I did give him, a lien on everything that I owned in the building, which was nothing. Oh, I had some children's stuff and toys for the nursery school, and enough pots and pans to both cook the kids' lunches and cook my suppers for the family. My children were sleeping on these little cots that we had for nap time, and I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. Well, eventually we got a bed. It was over a year before we got a TV. But we did what we had to do. Now, I'm not suggesting that you try to con a loan company or anything of that kind. But let's face it, you want to start a business, most of us don't have a whole bunch of money. And without at least some money, you got a serious problem. Anyway, I did that in 1961. Damn, that's 49 years ago. Hard to believe. 877-287-4964, 877-287-4964. On the internet, ask Bruce at brucewilliams.com. Yeah, that's me, Bruce Williams. If you would like to jump on the party line, we have 90 minutes remaining, and I'd like to have you involved. 877-287-4964. We go to Harrisonburg, Virginia. Hello there.
Hey, Bruce, how are you?
I am just fine, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to join the list of callers just thanking you for your many, many years of enjoyable service, and I just wanted to briefly tell you how I came about hearing you for the first time.
Yes, sir.
At the time, I was living in New York. I was working in midnight tours at the NYPD, and it was 1993, and I'm not sure if you were on WOR. Does that sound right?
No, might have been...
ABC?
No, hold on. WNEW.
WNEW.
At that time, WNEW, your voice in New York. Well, that was Bloomberg bought it and took it all business, and it's never been the same.
Right. Okay. Yeah, well, how I remember this so well is that the cop I was working with at the time, his name was Bruce Williams.
Oh, my God. Took my name, thief.
Yeah. So he used to get a lot of ribbing because Bruce Williams was a Bruce Williams fan, and that's how I came to hear you for the first time. And I've been listening off and on over the years. You know how radio is.
Sure.
You lose you get you back. You lose you, but since you're on the internet, it's much easier to get a hold of you now. But
so how did you migrate from New York City down to Harrisonburg?
I had friends that went to James Madison University, and when I retired, I wanted to get out of the high-cost area. So I always loved this area. I used to come visit them, and I just moved the family down there a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. One of my kids went to school down that way.
Okay.
He went to a place called Massanutten. Do you know it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he was a football player, got hurt in his senior year in high school, so he played a year of post-grad football at Massanutten.
Very good, yeah.
Massanutten had a high school football team that could regularly beat Division III and II college teams.
Wow.
They were almost all high school All-Americans that went there. It was and a guy named Sonny Randall was the coach. And he was, at that time, reputed to be the best or the next best wide receiver ever to have played pro ball. And he was let go by one of the pro teams as a coach because he was too tough on the players. So he winds up coaching a high school football team, and everybody on the football team was a PG. There was nobody from the regular high school. And the only team they lost to that year was University of Maryland, as I remember correctly.
Okay.
They're quite a group. And do you remember the kid? And I don't remember his name. It was my son's roommate. He played for San Diego, and he went to college in I want to say West Virginia or someplace. But nonetheless, he then played, I think, for San Diego, one of the West Coast teams. And he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated in his rookie year because he intercepted a pass, I believe, in the Super Bowl. But nonetheless, the kid had the biggest set of brass that I admire, because the next year he quit. He quit because he said he was crackback. That's what it was. The year before he was crackback and really got destroyed. And he said, I hear footsteps, and a linebacker in an NFL cannot hear footsteps. Now that took a hell of a lot more courage, in my opinion, than to fake an injury of some kind.
Yeah, you're right.
He just said, look, it's the way it is. They hit those two guys, ran me down, and he said, I'll never forget it.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Well, I just wanted to thank you again, Bruce. Wish you well, and I hope that you'll do something on the Internet. Maybe you'll just get on there once a month and do a quick show for us or something, well, your fan base.
One never knows. Never say never. And I'm very happy that I've said, since this episode began, never say never. I thank you very much, officer. I thought you know what I thought he was going to say? I thought he was going to say, I left New York City. He was a policeman in New York City. And he said, I thought he was going to say, well, I came down to Virginia because of the crime problem in New York City. But mercifully, he didn't come up with that one for me. Telephone number 877-287-4964. In our last hour, I've got a couple of things planned, and I would hope that you will hang around for them if you're able. The first is we're going to play the very first phone call that I ever took on the air for advice. Now, the quality, to say it's terrible, is probably paying it a compliment, but my wife recorded it on a cheap tape recorder off the air on a relatively modest nighttime signal in New Brunswick, New Jersey. So the fact that it got recorded and preserved from May the 14th, 1975, I certainly thank her for that. And it's hung around and it's been on my wall for a good many years, where it is again, I think. Is it not? Better be. So I'm only playing a minute of that. But it's the very first call, and then, of course, later on in that hour, somebody is going to make the last call. for advice, and that will be certainly after tens of thousands of phone calls. That's a lot of telephone calls. Then someplace else in that segment, we're going to share with you a tape that was lost for at least 20 years. And that's a tape of the very first national program. It was done at 10 o'clock at night from the fifth floor of NBC at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. And I'll mention a couple of guys that were there when the time comes. I'll be interested in what you think of the voice, because it surely is a little different than it was, well, hell, that was 30 years ago, for goodness sake. So we'll share that with you, and as well as taking your telephone calls. 877-287-4964. Pierre, South Dakota, hello there.
Thank you, Bruce. Congratulations. Job well done. I just had a couple comments and listened to you for all these years. One thing I remember you talking about how the youngsters always think they're bulletproof all the time. And this jointed thing is another thing, how you talked about going on cruises and how you also met a lot of females whose partners had died and always wanted to go on a cruise together.
Absolutely. And that was what I was going on, the kind that I run, but not only that, just on cruises that I went for a good deal of pleasure. There was always in the dining room that you would meet was, one or two or more elderly ladies. Never was a guy, because men, we have the decency to die, but nonetheless, was always elderly women who would share with you that they and the husband were always going to go on a cruise, but it was always going to be mañana, next year, pasado mañana, whatever, and suddenly the old man was either not in condition or just not. And I try to tell people, don't put those kinds of things off, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Well, that's exactly why I'm calling, is because I usually take your advice, but in that area I thought, well, I'm 49 at the time. I was young. I don't have to worry about that. We'll do this cruise thing when we retire and do it at that point. Well, then last year in January, I just about died from blood clots. Then I started to think, my God, this is the one thing that my wife and I always wanted to do, is take a cruise together. And even though I was, consider myself pretty young, I just about did make it. And, suddenly I figured, boy, that's one bit of a bright advice that Bruce has always said that I haven't taken. So we did break down, and we did book the cruise with you. So we're going to see you in a few weeks, and it's going to be our first cruise, and we're looking forward to it. And there's a tribute to you. I'm actually taking your advice, too.
Well, I certainly hope you have a good time, but the advice was sad. The advice was solid. It really was. And and it doesn't have to be a cruise with me or anything to do with me. But I'm not suggesting that people go out and spend money which they don't have and go into hock for vacations and whatever. On the other side of that, constantly putting things off until tomorrow is not the smartest thing you can do. But on the other hand, I got an email here somewhere in a pile of stuff today, and the guy says, you got to do one thing for me, Bruce, which is not in your nature. Go out and spend it all. Spend like a drunken sailor. Do all the stuff that you want to do and stuff you don't even want to do, but get out there and help the economy. You never know. I'm Bruce Williams. If you'd like to join us, let's get it on. I thank you so very, very much from all of your very interesting and touching emails. The many of them say, you've changed my life. And then they'll go on to outline something that I said, some things that were said just offhand. But the one that comes up regularly, and I've said it on many occasions, that I said, you got a problem. You've acted foolishly. You ran up some bills, you did, but you know the drill. But then what I will say on a regular basis, because I mean it, you have to decide when you look in the mirror that you're going to see a man or a woman staring back at you, or a petulant, whiny child at 40. You got to face the fact that you screwed up. That's for openers. That's no big deal. You say, I made a mistake. God knows I've made more than my share of them. And then you got to say, I got to do something about it. Now that may be a little bit more difficult, but I have received countless emails that are saying, that's what you said, and I decided I didn't like being a whiny whatever age. Oh, I can't pay for my student loans. It's so unfair. And so you got the drill. Well, I'm delighted that a good many of you listened to that little piece of wisdom, and it's changed your life. Kirkhoven, Minnesota. Hello there.
Hello, Bruce.
Good evening.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how I started listening to you, if I could.
Please do.
Going back to 1982 to 1985, somewhere in there. Were you broadcasting on a Canadian station?
Well, not on a Canadian station at that time, because that wasn't allowed. The Canadian government would not allow American programs.
Okay,
but we certainly leaked into Canada from the U.S. side.
Okay. Well, anyways, I was a young farm kid, maybe 12 to 15 years old, and I remember just tuning through the radio station to see what was on, and all we had was an AM radio in that old farm truck,
Oh, my God, you were some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Only AM radio. I mean, were you an abused child, too?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, go ahead.
But anyways, I guess what really I think back about now is how, back in the day, young boy, all that I listened to was music. But yet I listened to you. And I found you interesting at such a young age, and I listened to you for a few years, and then I kind of lost you through the 90s, and then when I got the satellite radio, I started listening to you again, and you've just given me a lot of wisdom. So...
Well, I'm appreciative of that. It's nice to know that at least some people have gotten a little... it's supposed to be entertaining, and I like to believe that it is entertaining. And that's as far as that goes. But there is also... I like to think that there has been some... I don't want to use the word wisdom because that's too profound, but information and maybe even philosophy that has made some people's lives just a little bit easier, a little bit better, a little more successful, a little more productive or whatever.
Definitely helped me to be more responsible financially. And I guess one last thing that I'd like to say is that if you do continue on the internet or whatever, one more person that would like to hear that.
Well, thank you again. That's appreciated. I do wish you well. And at the risk of being repetitive, our website will be up for the foreseeable future. That's just BruceWilliams.com. That's right, isn't it? BruceWilliams.com. I don't do websites. And there will be an email address on there, and there'll be a telephone address. And many of the products that we have an interest in will still be available, pork roll, flowers, and newspapers and all that sort of stuff. And if there's something going on or we have any kind of plan in the future, that's the place to find out. And if you want to get hold of me, looks like I'm going to have a lot of time. Well, maybe not as much time as I thought, but time on my hands, and I will very definitely, if you email me, try to get back to you. Next move is yours. I'm Bruce Williams. My goodness, we're going to go to the Big Apples, New York, New York. Hello there.
Hey, how you doing, Bruce?
Doing real well, thank you so much. What's up?
Well, like everybody else has been calling, I want to thank you for all the valuable information you've given out over the years. And actually, I kind of feel a little bit cheated because I started listening to you, I guess it was about 78 or 79. I was fresh out of college, and just listening to your commercials for a money market fund at that time.
The Lexington Money Market Fund.
Exactly. Actually, I didn't invest with them, but a competitor of theirs, but that actually got me started into the whole money market and eventually mutual funds and then eventually stocks. So
right.
My whole finance, my investments over the years, it was all started because of you.
Cool. I listened to some old commercials that was from WMCA.
Correct.
That was before I was on the network back in the late 70s. And I'm doing a commercial, well, for a company that's still in business. I see them advertising on New York television all the time. Doesn't matter their name right now. Mm-hmm. But they're advertising tax-free, this is for New York, triple tax-free, no state, no federal, and no city income tax, right? Okay, that was a good deal. Don't misunderstand me, right?
Right.
But at the end of the commercial, I'm urging people to give them a call. The interest rate, 14 to 16%.
Oh, my God.
Tax-free.
Wow.
And the Lexington Money Market Trust, Dan Calibria, was the president of the company, and we literally built that company on the air. They were paying 18% interest.
Exactly. Because I
believe this?
Definitely, because I used to take out student loans, and then I would get I guess you kind of say like a deferment in paying my tuition, and I would take the student loan money and put it in a money market fund and collect whatever 15% or whatever until the day I actually had to pay the tuition. So,
well, do you remember why the interest rates were so high?
Actually, I don't remember why.
James Earl Carter.
Okay.
Mr. Carter allowed the prime rate to sneak over 20%. That Mr. Carter, with his incredible mismanagement, he and his administration, the inflation rate was so incredibly high that's why the interest rates were up there. It wasn't a good deal because it was costing so much more to live.
Yeah, but in the Carter's defense, I believe Paul Volcker was actually his
Federal Reserve guy?
Yeah. Right, not under Reagan, it was actually under Carter. But anyway, Bruce, the reason I'm calling is that I can't believe it's the last day, but I need your help on something.
Well, unfortunately, we've talked ourselves into a corner. But I will tell you this, if you want to be part of the last hour, if you want to hold on, it may be a few minutes, but we'll get to you. Fair enough?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, kid. Son of a gun. I mean, I can't say call tomorrow night because, well, that's another story. But you can be part of the last hour at 877-287-4964. I'm Bruce Williams. Well, hello there. How we doing? I'm Bruce Williams. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world, where we talk about you and your life, your hopes, your ambitions, and just on some occasions, we'll help you spin a dream. Well, I've used that introduction in excess of 22,000 times, and that's the last one. The last time. Things always come to some kind of an end, and one door opens, another one closes. This last hour, hopefully I don't blow it or say something I shouldn't say, and I will have to ask your indulgence if I do or get a little sentimental or whatever. This has been an enormous part of my life for a lot of years. This is the longest-running telephone talk show in the nation by far. I mentioned earlier that if Rush remains in good health and stays in the business, that he will have my record eclipsed or equaled somewhere in 2017. So at least for the next 7+ years, I will still have had the longest running program continually. Now, tonight it ends, and so my record is over. but I'm kind of pleased about it. So many good things have happened over these years. Now let me give you I got an email that's a hoot. But first of all, we will, in this half hour, briefly play the very first call I ever took on the air. On May the 14th, 1975, on WCTC in New Brunswick, New Jersey. WCTC. And they had an FM side, WQMR. That was a throwaway. Nobody had listened to FM at the time, and they had to put something on the air, so they just put their AM side on. Now the FM is the tail wagging the dog, and the AM side is doing not much. Things have a habit of changing. 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening is when we made that first broadcast. A little later on, sometime in this hour, since this is my last shot, I will play a broadcast which disappeared for about 20 years, and I found it in my basement in an old collection of tapes. Pure piece of serendipity. The very first broadcast we did for NBC. The very first one. There was a note on the tape. It says, the engineer, technologically it wasn't perfect. Wait till you hear the first one we did in 75. My wife took it off the air on a cheap tape recorder off a radio on a relatively modest nighttime signal. You can depend on it. The quality there was pretty rough. In any case, if you'd like to join us, if you've ever had a thought of doing it, now is the hour. I have a remarkable email in front of me. At least it is a first that I know of. What a way to go out with a first that you know of. It's from Daniel Lear, Leahr, Atlanta, Georgia. He said, Bruce, I enjoy you looking back on technology as it relates to your listeners around the world. I am currently at 35,000 feet on a Delta flight listening to your show streaming via the in-flight internet on my PC. This has come a long way from the 1695 AM radio I first heard you on. If this is not going out on top, I don't know what is. Best wishes, Dan Lear, Atlanta, Georgia. Dan, you have made the evening for me. I remember when I got my first telephone call on a car phone. My God, that was really two-way radio. We had to have separate 800 numbers. You couldn't have an 800 number for New York where we were broadcasting if a call originated outside of New York. No, was it? Yeah, that's right. You had to call from in New York, and we had to have a number if you call from anywhere else, but it couldn't be where you were originating. So we had two 800 numbers, one of which was for a honeymoon hotel. And this guy is getting, and that even now you pay for incoming 800 numbers. And our number was like one digit off the honeymoon hotel in the Poconos. And as a consequence, this guy is getting hundreds of calls from all over the country and he's paying for them. They're essentially collect telephone calls. He was going absolutely nuts with nothing we could do about it. Our number was one number away. Earlier, I was talking with a gentleman in New York, and we reminisced about one thing or another, but he said, I got a question for you. Well, I couldn't tell him to call back next week, so I did what I don't think I've ever done, is held him over the top of an hour. Well, what the hell? This is the time to make innovations. Who knows what will come of all this? New York, hello there. You had a question this time. What's on your mind?
Okay. Bruce, this is a situation. The last 3 days, I've had packages delivered to my apartment that have my last name, obviously my address, and a different first name.
Are they delivered by a service like UPS or somebody?
Exactly. And they're from vendors. They're store purchases, basically. Mm-hmm. Not like local stores like Macy's or whatever, but, whatever, through the internet or maybe through TV or something. I've called a couple of the vendors, and I said, basically, these aren't mine. Can you tell me, who this person is? And I just want to verify this.
Was it all the same? Like your name is Bruce Williams, but it's John Williams. They're all to John. I mean, they're not all over the lot.
Exactly. They're all to John.
one person. Go ahead.
All one person, a female. And I called and I ran a credit report to make sure that there wasn't any new openings in my credit account or things like that. Nothing on my credit report. They couldn't give me the charge card number of what's being charged, but they could, they told me what kind of card it was, and they told me the last 4 digits. The telephone number that's on file is my phone number, my home phone number here. And
let me ask you this: are they all delivered with the annotation "no signature required"?
I have a doorman building, so.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask would be interesting to see if they want to have them delivered when you're not there and then come collect them.
Right. Yeah, that would be a thought, but no. Everything's the same except for the first name, and so far all the products have been geared toward female-related type products.
Has anybody attempted to come and pick them up from your house?
No, it's only been the last 3 days, but no. And besides the way the doorman situation is here, I mean, they know who I am, and.
Well, that may be, but somebody could come to the doorman and ask.
That's true, but no, I haven't.
I understand that. No, but they wouldn't give this stuff. I understand that part of it.
Yeah. I haven't asked them, but I'm sure they probably would have said something to me.
I'd call UPS and say, I'd like you to pick this stuff up. If it's UPS that's delivering it, it probably is.
But in terms of my credit...
well, you told me that there's no record of anybody...
Yeah, not yet, at least.
And there's nothing you can do about it if it's charged to somebody else. You got the last 4 digits. It's not the same 4 on your card, is it?
No, I checked that.
So
just verify that.
It's hard to understand what's going on.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. And then, how they got the name screwed up, are they coming from all different vendors or just one?
So far, there have been 3 different vendors. In fact, I got a postcard saying that one of my orders is going to be late. So I called up that vendor and said, "Don't even bother sending it." And actually, they were the one that told me the card that was being chosen.
And what did they say?
Basically, the names that they had in the files, the name that's being sent to,
right.
And the address and the telephone number.
I got a feeling that somebody has just poked something into a computer someplace in error. It doesn't sound to me. How much were or if you know, and the one you very likely know, are these, is he ordering diamonds or makeup?
So far, there's been a couple of makeups, and then there's some sort of hobby-type kit that costs $264.
Huh. That's interesting. That's a fair-sized purchase.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it. You can do one of 2 things. You can write to the vendors and say, I got this stuff here. What do you want me to do with it? Or you can just call UPS and say, this person isn't here. My inclination, if you got a little room in your closet, I'd write to the vendors because my curiosity would be piqued.
Yeah.
And if UPS picks them up, that's the end of it. You're not going to hear very much. But if the vendors get back to you, then you may hear something.
Oh, okay.
So it would be a little more effort on your part to do it that way.
No, I'm kind of curious myself, to be honest with you.
Well, in that case, I would write to each vendor and say, I got your stuff. I didn't order it, and I'd like to know the specifics of who ordered it before it's returned to you.
I'm going to do that tonight as I hang up the phone. And once again, Bruce, it's been a pleasure to have the honor of even talking to you tonight, and I wish you and your family the best in your next venture. You are very gracious. Thank you so very much. Here's a case where I'd say, under ordinary circumstances, call me back when you find out. Actually, you could send me an email at askbruce@brucewilliams.com when this thing plays itself out. I will not have the ability to share it with my listeners, but, I'm a naturally kind of a curious sort of guy. The telephone number, 877-287-4964. In a moment or two,
we are going to have a little break. And after the break, I am going to share with you the very first telephone call that somebody wanted information in this career of 35 years on May the 14th, 1975, from the third floor studios on George Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Well, WCTC and WNGQ are now in beautiful broadcast facilities, the Tony Morano studios. Well, at that time, and this one station grew into a huge chain, Greater Media, but at that time we were on the third floor, a walk up, had a pound on the door, and a guy named Jack Shreve answered the door. My first engineer. I'm Bruce Williams. Alrighty, we are going to take a little walk down memory lane. After a considerable period of time pitching the boss, Tony Morano, I finally got my first regular show, 1 hour a week, from 8 to 9 on WCTC, called At Your Service. And the idea was to be kind of an ombudsman and hear and listen and talk to people and give them advice. The recording is crude, was done off the air, meaning on the broadcast, on a cheap recorder, but I'm so pleased that it was done. After all, when we did this show, nobody figured it'd be around very long. So going back almost just shy of 2 months of 35 years ago, this is the way it all began.
Good evening, this is Bruce Williams. I'm at your service.
Zach?
May I help you?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm on Social Security disability, and my wife changed her address in January, and there's 4 children themselves, and they haven't received their checks now. This is the 5th month, and we've contacted Social Security and written the ball of them all and whatnot. With the 4 children in her, it's all the revenue we got coming in, you know. We wonder where we could go to expedite it a bit.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. You say your wife changed her address. Does that mean that you changed your address as well?
Yeah, well, no. See, I was in the VA hospital for a year and a half, and they came back from England in December.
I see.
And that was the very first telephone call. I would curious, what do you think about the voice? I mean, that a voice, your same voice from 35 years, and I don't think there's been a huge difference. Maybe I've learned to articulate perhaps a little more clearly, and then again, maybe not. But that was the very first of the bunch. Zach, the screen is absolutely blank here. East Providence, Rhode Island. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. How you doing, my friend?
Doing very well, thank you.
I'm going to miss you, buddy. I'm going to miss you very, very much. I think we're all going to miss you. Because it's weird because sometimes I remember I was just on a roll one day, and I'm thinking, and I was bored. I just started pumping the station, and I just happened to hear your voice, and somebody was explaining their problems or whatever, and you were giving their answers and stuff. And saying, oh, I never really liked talk radio. I thought that was for old fogies. Dumb people listen to that.
What an endorsement that is.
From 1980 to now, I am very, very listening to you very, very much. And sometimes my kids, I can hear them under their breath saying, oh, that's your grandpa, little Bruce, you know. But, the advice that you give, and one thing about you, I like about you, because you don't play things or tickle people there. You tell them like it really is. You're not there to, you agree with things, but disagreeable, but you do it in a respectful manner, and I admire you for that. And I don't want to take up too much time, because other people like to say their farewells, but always says goodbye to a dear friend, and wish you peace and happiness, and you and your wife and your children, and the best of luck with everything you do. I'm going to miss you, my dear friend.
You are very generous, and I thank you very, very much. Oh, my goodness gracious. We've, again, had a little glitch with our telephones, and I know a bunch of you are hanging in there, and all of a sudden, you're not there. So I apologize for that. If there will be some time to get on in this last 20-odd minutes that remain to us. There are a couple of things that I want to explore in the last hour. And after we, in about 2 or 3 minutes, take a commercial interlude, I'm going to share with you that the long-lost first Talknet tape, Talknet. The music, in my opinion, was the best we've ever had over the years, without question. A young, talented musician wrote the words and the music. And he, if I remember correctly, he was either still in or just out of college and was very, very pleased to be able to get his work on a radio nationally. When it came time to renew, he had enjoyed some remarkable success, which he clearly deserved, and at that point wanted to get paid for what he gets paid for in very, substantial amounts of money, and NBC was not willing to go for that. I wanted to take you for a walk around my studio, by the way. There are a bunch of wooden numbers up on a wall. You see that we developed talk radio, believe it or not. There were no computers, none of that stuff. The wooden numbers I had done by a friend, Kenny Langdon, for $75, and one of my bosses, Maurice Tunick, I thought was going to have a stroke. $75 for wooden blocks. The blocks have a groove in the top of them, just a slot, and they put those blocks up on the window, and it would say Austin, Texas. And that's how they communicated. The numbers on the slots, on the boxes, on the blocks, were the numbers of the telephone line. So if it was number 5, it meant Austin, Texas. I had to punch up on line 5. Yeah, we were high-tech in those days. I'm Bruce Williams. Well, son of a gun, we enter our final half hour, and I'm so glad that you have stuck around and eavesdropped and commented and whatever. I'm very, very pleased. On November the 2nd, 1981, from the 5th floor of the NBC building that at that time was the RCA building, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, we started a new adventure. It was called Talknet. The original program was 10 to midnight, and then Sally Raphael followed from, I think, midnight to 3. But mine was the first, and it was 2 hours long, 10 to midnight. Everybody was in there. Dick Penn was the vice president of NBC. Mark Mason, who used to be the PD at WMCA and then came into NBC. Maurice Tunick. Bunch of very, very nice, talented, but that's okay, but nice people. A lot of fussing at the last minute. Something I've never told anybody. We had some phone calls that we stole from from WMCA. In other words, I was still doing the MCA program when I moved over to NBC. We had a 2-week period in the middle, and so I took the names of people, had the engineer off the air, so we had somebody to call. We only had 20-some stations, so we didn't say Austin, Texas. We just said Texas, because there was only one Texas station, and unfortunately the list of those stations has been lost, as far as I know, forever, the original. I'm sure somebody knows some of them. But in any event, just 1 minute before I began, they suddenly decided to give me a headset with a microphone, like I'm using now, rather than a real microphone. I never used anything like that before. I'm no sportscaster. So I'm fumbling around, and people are running. I guess the big mic wouldn't work or something, but my God, there was a chaos before we went on the air. At 6 minutes and 32 seconds, I believe it was, past 10 o'clock on a Monday, November the 2nd, 1981. And it sounded just like this.
Something to share, Someone you know who will always be there. Tune in, turn on, Talknet. We care.
Good evening, my friends. Hey, I'm Bruce Williams. How are you? The name of the program? Talknet. Now, listen, I'm not quite sure why you're there, but do stick around for a little while. Who knows? We make you a regular habit here at Talknet. Welcome. It's the nation's very, very first coast-to-coast help program. Yep, that's what Talknet's all about. Everybody has problems from one time or another. Let's call it decisions. We all make decisions. They range from the trivial to the profound. Well, if it's important to you, believe me, it's important to me. Now, what kind of problems? Well, basically, I deal in money-related areas, but, that gives us an ocean or two to roam around in. Yeah, we can talk about your investments. Now, look, do me a big favor, huh? I don't want to talk about specific stocks, no. But I'll talk in general terms to you. How about the terms that these money people use? Money market funds. How about those all-saver certificates? I would call them some savers. Hey, stick around. I have a feeling the subject's going to come up. You own your own home? Would you like to own your own home? Is now the time to buy? Is now the time to sell? Indeed, can you sell? What do you do if you can't make your payments? Well, we can help you there as well. Real estate is one place where we common folk can build a bit of equity realistically and almost painlessly. Think back to your 3rd or 4th grade days. You're talking to your teacher, and they said, Sammy, tell us what the LCD is. What's an LCD? Remember that? The lowest common denominator? Sure. Well, I've always thought of money as being the LCD. Why so? Because rich and poor, old and young, tall and short, all of us have money concerns, and you and I can share these concerns. Very possibly, we'll all benefit from it, huh? Hey, you ever think of yourself as being in a rut? Yeah, I felt that way on occasion. You're thinking about changing jobs. How about the great American dream? You own your own business. Be the boss, huh? Well, before you hawk the family jewels, give me a shout. Before you buy a fast food restaurant or a transmission franchise, let's get together. I can save you a whole pot of grief, not to mention a fistful or two of dollars. Frequently it's kind of... Let's try it, huh? Now, who's this guy Williams? Bruce Williams is my name. Sure, it's a good question. The next few weeks...
Well, son of a gun, that was the original... Man, I was talking like a tobacco auctioneer. Hey, boy, was I was nervous as hell. And I'm spitting it out. We never did get to the 800 numbers. And by the way, I did a show where I used the old 800 numbers. And somebody called one of them. It's now one of these dirty phone lines where you give them your credit card and you know the kind. Figures, I get the phone number and never mind. All right, but I'll give you our number now. It's 877-287-4964. Where are we going? Oh, my goodness. This, of all times for the telephones to give us a bad time, because all you would have got was a busy. Now the phones have dropped out for a second misadventure. So if you were on there and you really like to get on, well, tonight is the last time, and the lines are open as we speak. Should I give the telephone? Do I dare give the telephone? Do I dare give the telephone number? Well, I'll try. 877-287-4964. We go to Manhattan, New York. Hello there.
Hey, Bruce. How you doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
This is John, one of your former producers. John Sapian, 2005.
Oh, no, of course, John. So many nice people that I used to work with have given us a call.
Well, listen, I've been calling for 45 minutes. I can't get through. This is amazing.
I'm pleased
you
that you're here.
You must be having quite a send-off over there.
Well, we're also having some telephone problems, but does that surprise you of all people?
Well, listen, technological problems are no stranger to anybody in radio.
Indeed.
Well, yeah, I'm calling to see how the party's going.
Well, so far, my wife is asking me whether she should open the bottle of Dom Perignon, and I told her not before the program has been completed.
T-minus 20 minutes.
There's something in that order. It's been
There you go.
As I mentioned earlier, over 22,000 hours. That's a long time.
That's remarkable.
That's a long time. But
well, listen. You were in radio a long time when I worked for you. It's even longer since then. That's amazing.
Indeed. Well, we've been managed. I never could keep a job up until now, and now I've blown this one, so we're starting all over again. I thank you very, very. You got anything else? I don't want to cut you short.
I was just going to say but this is just part of your entrepreneurial spirit, Bruce. You're just moving on to bigger.
There you go. I'm really trying to hold somebody up for a bigger salary. What can I tell you? I thank you so very much, babe. It was good talking to you, and it certainly was a pleasure working with you. You were a gentleman. 877-287-4964. I have been privileged to work with a great many very, very nice people that have gone on to real jobs. Dick Brennan called last night. Dick was a intern at WMCA 30-some years ago. I remember he's a Fordham graduate and a very, very diligent young man, and he learned very quickly, and he now is the chief political reporter for Fox, which is quite a jump, and he also is a talking head, in other words, an anchor in New York City radio. Mike Thompson, who was born the day that I got discharged from the Air Force, called, and he is now the big mocker up in Pittsburgh running ESPN. Kevin Delaney is a vice president of Westwood One. My former manager, Bill Lally, called me today. I haven't spoken with Bill for some period of time. He's been working out in Los Angeles for a significant period of time. Whole bunch of very, very nice people, and some of them have gone on to a real job. San Diego, hello there.
Yeah, hey, brother.
You bet.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. You probably don't realize it, but you helped me move out of New England. I was going to move to Florida, and somebody from Chicago, you were talking to a nice lady about 17, 18 years ago, and you convinced her not to move to Florida because it was flat and boring. And
I said that?
You said to go to San Diego because it's the only place where the flowers bloom year-round. It's hilly, and it's nice, and it's beautiful, and I had never been there. But we need to move out of Salem, Massachusetts for a particular reason because of finances, and I moved to San Diego 15 years ago, and it's all because of you, and I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Well, son of a gun. And I have visited San Diego. Matter of fact, I was a guest at a radio station, and just for kicks, I was cheering against San Diego, and they lost to New England. But that's another story. Thank you very much for your call. I'm Bruce Williams. Well, we enter our last segment. Wow. But I promised that I would read the Rainbow Bridge. You know, I'm a pet lover, and I make no apologies for it. I never had one of my dogs ask me who I've been drinking with and how come I'm coming home so late. All they do is wag what little tail they have and let you know they're glad to see you. The Rainbow Bridge, from an unknown author. There's a bridge connecting heaven and earth. It is called the Rainbow Bridge because of its many colors. Just this side of the Rainbow Bridge, there's a land of meadows, hills, and valleys with lush green grass. When a beloved pet dies, the pet goes to this place. There is always food and water and warm spring weather. The old, the frail animals are young again. Those that are maimed or made whole again, they play all day with each other. There's only one thing missing. They're not with their special person who loved them on earth. So each day they run and play until the day comes when one suddenly stops playing and looks up. The nose twitches. The ears are up. The eyes are staring, and this one suddenly runs from the group. You have been seen. And when you and your special friend meet, You take him or her in your arms and you embrace. Your face is kissed again and again and again, and you look once more into the eyes of your trusting pet. Then you cross the rainbow bridge together, never again to be separated. Meant a lot to me when my puppy was in trouble, and I hope it means something to at least one of you. St. Louis, hello there.
Hey, Bruce, my friend, in 1981, I was 13 years old, and my father died in January, and he listened to talk radio, and I listened to it with him, and after he died, I continued to listen to it, and I was listening in November of that year when you first came on, and the jingle got my attention, first of all, someone who cared, you know, because I was a little kid who just lost his dad and all of that, and I've listened to you ever since, and Bruce, you know what, you've always given it to me straight, and you've been there for me all my life, pretty much, Bruce, and I wanted to tell you I appreciate that, and I've never called because I just thought it would be corny, but I didn't want to let you go without telling you.
You are very generous, and a call such as yours means a great deal to me. That you can take right to Barclays. I appreciate it, my friend. That's what I talk about, and I try to impress those in my business that in this enterprise, which frankly there are a lot of people out there I'm not particularly proud of, and I wouldn't necessarily want to have much to do with them personally. They shoot from the hip. They are frequently very disingenuous. They'll pick up on issues not because they have any passion toward them, or they pick on the issues because they feel that that's what's going to get them ratings and whatever. And when my attitude has always been, since I entered this enterprise, that we have a responsibility, and clearly taking the calls that we've had and the incredible number of emails, people who say to me that I have made a difference in their life, that I might have made a suggestion, however strongly or weakly, that they go back to school, meet their responsibilities, or whatever. And literally thousands of you have contacted me over the years and said, I have made a little bit of difference. The next call will be the last of this career. You heard the first one made 35 years ago. Well, whatever's on your mind, Birmingham, you are the last caller in a rather long career. Hello there.
Bruce, this is Steve. To you, your wife, Mr. Pistol and Biscuit, all I have to say is thank you. I have greatly appreciated listening to you these nights going down the road, and thank you very much.
Can't beat that one for a last one, Steve. I thank you so very, very much. The last of, got to be 10, 15,000 calls at the very least. You heard the first one. Now you've heard the last one. I want to thank all the people who have helped shape my career. Certainly my wife, my first wife, Ruth Ann, who was there when it all began and was extraordinarily supportive, did without and whatever. My second wife, Susan, who has been the light of my life for the last dozen years, and hopefully, if she doesn't throw me out, I'll be around for another year or two. My kids, we've had differences of opinion over the years, which is perfectly normal, and I'm sure we will continue to have them. But they also have been supportive, put up with my idiosyncrasies. What the hell do you want to do that radio for? Aren't you tired of it? Well, I did a lot of things, but I was never tired of it, and I was never tired of you. You guys have been enormously supportive, And as I have been part of your life, you have very much been a part of mine. Well, for the last time, we're going to go to a commercial break. I get to say, I'm Bruce Williams. For a good many years, I followed the same format on this program. Things changed at 9/11 as the world changed. Beginning shortly after 9/11, I changed my format and ended every program with God Bless America, and my final signature was God Bless America in my voice rather than Keep in Touch. I have never regretted the change. So, for the last time, my favorite version of God Bless America.
God bless America.
It's been a hell of a run, and you guys have made it possible. One last time, I'm Bruce Williams. God bless these wonderful United States of America.